stories here. Right. Now you see, I love my front window curtain. That's important, if I remember. Okay. In this dreadful, precious, prissy society that is so prevalent over the southwest, you're not allowed to use the word fraud. I have no interest in these people whatsoever. In fact, the purpose of the following is actually, I shall never manage it, but for years, in fact for 20 years, I've wanted to do something. One thing above all. Right. Nomadland is a fraud. A total fraud. Divisive talk? No, exactly the opposite. "300 metres away for 3 or 4 days, I've been chatting regularly. In fact, yesterday I was bridging between, I think she's 63, woman who's staying in her van, which she's had 15 years. I was bridging between her and an old man who has got serious health issues. Now, that's almost a side issue, but not really. Anyway, Nomadland is a fraud. Over a year, unintentionally, just for chatty company. Let's put it this way. 20 years ago, in Britain and in Europe, but actually Britain was good at this. I think probably we were better. In a way, there was a kind of, now, me personally, I have to just put in one of these, I can't stand the word van. I have entirely happily lived in this little thing for nearly 3 years, but only here. Unfortunately, I've never spent a night elsewhere other than in here. But I actually hate the word van. I hate machinery. I hate... Why do I say I hate the word van? Because you have a section of male van people who, it's been so obvious over the last 20 years, it's like it's about the van. And it's about, I'm a people watcher, or I just sit aside, and sometimes if I'm aside where there are people, I'll take note. That sounds horrible. No, it's just like I lament on their behalf. They make it about their machine, and then it's all the machine talk and the accessories talk and all the talk about the machine. Now, yes, you have to, now, miraculously, just simply miraculously, a van woman who I trust, because I got to know her over a few months, I would encounter her occasionally, told me of a magnificent man who, he actually lives in a van. And he is the MOT tester for this region. And he's one of us. Now, here's the bottom line, is that with a machine, unfortunately you need, and it almost always is a man, you can trust who isn't going to rip you off. I couldn't believe it. In fact, I trust this man. He told me as he was looking underneath my van that a large amount of work that had been done 16 months ago, and I absolutely assumed these super smiley, charmy new van people, it wasn't a specialist van place or anything, that they'd rip me off. They'd put in the wrong axle, and it really seriously compromised my brakes. And that's not some kind of health and safety thing. It's like it was a complete con. And I actually trusted them. I spent a lot of time there. April last year. Right, to the point. Nomadland is a fraud. All I care about is as follows. And I only care to share this with the next generation, my own daughter. if you spend a certain amount of time in this kind of mode, you're away from it all. And we used to, in all the 2000s, I had an old camper van, a Type 2.5, and we would often, I say, well, it was we, but it was me, get out, further out from awful places like Hay-on-Wye, which just became London on fucking Wye, get out into mid-Wales, or sometimes other places. Not Wales because of Wales. There is no Wales. All of this offer is all a myth. Just get out, right out into the countryside. The wilds. So good for you. You wake up 6 o'clock in the morning, or if you must, 8 o'clock, or 10 o'clock. And if you spend a night somewhere super lovely, quiet, and you wake up to largely just nature, you just feel great. Always. Now, here's the point. Nomadland is a fraud. It is such a fraud. I actually know 5 van women. Now, only one of them lives full-time, 3 years in her van. She's, what is she? She's 57. She was around here a week ago. And despite we had a slight, not a contretemps, I suggested to her that her attitude about certain things was a little bit blinkered because she'd inherited some money. You see them again next time, and this is a total living in the moment zen. It's like, yeah, you've got there's an honour, there's a kind of code almost. Now, I'm not interested. I hate being associated with a vehicle. Apart from anything else, ideally, one would use very little hydrocarbon in this day and age. But anyway, let's keep to the point. Nomadland is a fraud because 3 women I know, 55 to 70. I've spent a certain amount of time chatting with this in the last few months. And then prior to that, another woman who'd been living in her van. Actually, she lives full-time. I'd forgotten about her because she's one of the many, unfortunately, dangerous, semi-cultish, I want to start some new kind of slightly transcendental community things, which on paper are wonderful, but I'm sorry, they always end up as vicious, horrible things, narcissistic, grandiose. Nomadland is a fraud because every single one, even her, they wake up in the morning and they are always feeling great. And they always say so. They always have bright eyes. And in fact, the woman who's kind of been staying around here, she's just on holiday, but no, she actually does spend quite a lot of time in her van. She's just the perfect example, although unfortunately I've been goading her. Come on, let's kind of try and make something about you. And every time I encounter her, she just says, I just so love being in my van. In fact, we'd introduced her to this mechanic who was going to do some work, and she was actually saying, I don't want my van to be in for the night because I just love being in my van. This is, I think she's 60, she's 64, I think. And there have been a couple of really awful days. So what's the point? Yeah. It's like, now to me, I've no interest in vans. I've no interest in Britain. I do have insight due to being at the coalface, never paid, of the utter fucking mess that's happened within in fact, you get a lot of teachers come down here that I chat with them, and they all say that their schools, their classrooms in Britain have just turned into hell. Now, the only way you deal with that long term is by having more Zen grounded people. We could call them, yeah, my encounter here is, you could call her almost a classic blue hair. But she's all right because she spends time in her van. And she even said to me a few days ago, oh, in the rain, I just close the door and have a reading day. Have a reading day. I hope she doesn't read this crap. Accidentally, I bought that. I've read it before, actually. Oh, it turns into fucking mass murder. Jesus Christ. But above all, in fact, I only found this. I look after bits of land, and I kind of battled to. I want to do it my way, organically, just pulling out the bits you really, really, really don't want, and we'll leave as much as possible. No spray, thank you very much. That can turn into a political battle, which I've experienced before. Well, in fact, it's one of the main reasons I kind of almost despise this country. In the marches for years I would do that, and it's always like, oh no, that's another thing, let's leave that for another day. But Nomadland is a fraud. Yeah, I happened to be walking by somewhere about 4 or 5 months ago and met this super net. Beside the road there was this like gorgeous supermodel woman, but I could tell she was in her van, and I could just tell from her body language that she spent quite a lot of time in this van. So I just actually was walking past and kind of made some gesture to her, and she wound down her window, like, you know, not. That's the point. The van people know that not all men are axe murderers, and we chatted, and I met her again, and she told me about there's a really great park up here, and it's like, this is the code, the honour of, I don't want to say the van, but if you have this mode in you where, oh, what's going on out there isn't important, and if you can find some place where there's plenty of nature, and these are actually flowering, it does you inside so much good. Now, these are the people you want running your schools, running your social services, running your kind of whatever the latest scam is, because it's all a scam. I'm writing and trying to talk to people about this. Not that talking makes any difference in Britain, because nobody can listen, but the sort of you want people who've got a bit more, who've got genuine. You know, if you listen to Farming Today this morning, which I did, even in Scotland, some blue hair is despairing that children are just so disconnected from nature, which is true. I've seen it. I tried to bring my child up so close to nature, which means, by the way, close to shit. Nature is shit. Nature is about poo. Anyway, that's kind of, that's been the one. I lived in a region where you didn't, I know, one would avoid people, frankly. One you can't avoid people in the southwest. It's got 8 times the population density of my previous region, the England-Wales borderland, roaming there, hiding away, just parking up for days, sometimes in the hills. Yeah, that's the big takeaway. To my surprise, meeting and spending a pretty good time with like 7 women who are very, very, very vanish. Of course, we can't have the whole country buying vans and clogging up. I mean, the important thing is, in fact, I've wanted to try and get 1 or 2 of these women to do something with me, because it's like, yeah, a year ago I'm over the other side by Gwick, and I was out of the little town, 3 or 4 kilometres up into the, no, it's only a couple of kilometres up a road. I was just parked at a gateway, just for an hour or 2. I was just, whatever I was doing, sitting down writing something in my notepads, which, you know, the art of the van is like, you've got to be just slightly organised about things, like keep notepads, and, you know, you just have slight just slight adjustments to your habits. But that's useful because I then put them in my backpack if I'm going out. Anyway, I was parked by this gate and a farmer came by. Now I can put a farmer at ease. I straight away say something like, "Oh, hello, I'm interested in your field. I was brought up on a farm." You know, that immediately is an icebreaker. But then he's like, because they don't stop unless they want aggro. And this guy said to me, "Look, you know, just checking what you're doing." Yeah, well, that's a free fucking country, but no, not anymore. But anyway, yeah, and we got chatting, and he's like, "Yeah, we get people stopping here and shitting actually where the gate is." So the farmer ends up with human shit on his boots. And he was really upset. He said it keeps happening. Now, the code of the van is you must never do things like that. You must, we knew 30 years ago. 27 years ago, I had my first van. No, lie, 30 years ago. You know not to behave like that. Otherwise, it ruins it for everybody else. But that's, you can't have the whole of Britain, particularly the way Britain behaves now. Even or especially at places like Gwig. It's like, Jesus Christ, that's a fucking basic thing. Don't park in a farmer's... I mean, the people that have been shitting actually where the gate is opened. So you can't avoid that shit. Anyway, Nomadland is a fraud, though. Every single... And I first encountered them 26 years ago. Women who... And I think Nomadland, in a very pernicious and evil way, is manipulating society such that it kind of makes out it's this partial pity piece. Nope. Vanning is the exact opposite. You never feel self-pity. And I've known many women who will say that, exemplify this, and when our culture is doing this, and okay, one film, but when I encountered this, and our culture's doing this, it's the exact opposite message we need to be passing down to younger people. Whether or not vanish, I'm sure exactly the same goes for boatish people. There we go. The beginning